Okay, so like most people, I'm always trying to figure out how to, succeed, but in a way that doesn't mean like stepping on other people to get there. You know what I mean?
It's a tough balance, for sure. And you know what? Adam Grant really digs into this whole dynamic in his book, Give and Take. He talks about like givers and takers and how they navigate this whole thing.
So we're basically diving into like how do we approach all these interactions we have?
Right.
Work, personal life, the whole shebang.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what's wild is Grant doesn't just say it's one or the other. He says there's this whole spectrum of giving and taking. But get this, givers are both at the very bottom, A and D at the very top when it comes to success.
Wait, really? How does that even work? It seems kind of backwards, right? Like if you're always busy giving, how do you ever get ahead? Wouldn't that hold you back?
You're totally right. It's not what you'd expect. That's why this whole giver-taker thing is so interesting. To really get it, we got to break down what Grant actually means by these terms.
Yeah, let's do that. What makes someone a giver, according to Grant?
So he points out a few things. Givers, they're all about creating value for everybody, not just themselves. They're not just bringing their own dish to the potluck. They're trying to make the whole darn thing amazing.
I like that analogy. So it's about making the pie bigger for everyone, not just grabbing a huge slice for yourself.
Exactly. And when they're working with others, givers, they put the group's success first. Like they'll even put their own needs aside to make sure everyone wins together.
Okay, but now I'm picturing those people pleasers, always putting everyone else first, then they burn out and get resentful. Is that what Grant's talking about?
I hear you. That's a good point. And yeah, we'll definitely get into the downsides of giving later. But there's a difference here. It's not about being a pushover. Grant's talking about real givers who genuinely want everyone to succeed. It comes from a good place.
So it's less about like sacrificing yourself and more about believing that everyone can succeed together.
You got it. And it's not just some fluffy idea either.
Mm.
Grant's got examples, like Richard Branson. Remember him? Even as a teenager, Branson was all about helping others. Like he'd stay up late talking to people who were struggling. That wasn't just teenage angst. That's just who he is.
Wow, that's serious dedication. Makes you think maybe that drive to help others is what actually helped him become so successful later on.
Right? It's a cool connection. And it shows how giving can have a lasting impact. Another thing Grant talks about is registered gifts. You ever spend forever trying to find that perfect gift, something totally unique and unexpected?
Oh gosh, tell me about it. I've wasted hours looking for that just right thing.
I feel you.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Grant says those super thoughtful gifts, sometimes they miss the mark. Why? Because we're focused on what we think the person wants, not what they actually want.
So it's more about seeing things from their perspective, putting their needs first.
Bingo. It's about really listening to them and caring enough to give them something they actually want, even if it's something predictable, like something on their wish list.
Yeah.
It shows you care in a different way.
It's about being thoughtful, but not in a showy way. It's kind of deep when you think about it.
Totally. It's about shifting your whole perspective. You're putting connection and shared value above your own personal gain.
That's really interesting. So we've talked about givers. Now I got to ask, what about the takers? We've all met a few of those, right?
Sadly, yeah. And they're not usually that hard to spot. Think of those people who treat networking like a one-way street. They just want your contacts and connections. They don't care about actually building a relationship with you.
Oh, yeah, the classic networkers. Always collecting people instead of seeing what they can offer.
Exactly. And since they're so focused on themselves, takers love to take credit for other people's work. They downplay what others have done. And if something goes wrong, they'll throw you under the bus in a heartbeat.
Ugh, the dreaded credit taker. We all know one.
It's sad, but true. The thing is, takers might get some quick wins here and there, like a promotion or a closed deal. But in the long run, they're burning bridges and ruining their reputation.
Like that saying, you can fool some of the people some of the time, but...
You got it. You can't fool everyone forever. Eventually, people figure out who they really are, and their reputation catches up with them. That's why it's so important to recognize those taker tendencies. We all have our moments, but it's about being aware of it in ourselves and in the people around us.
Because let's be real, nobody wants to be stuck dealing with a taker.
Right. So if you understand these dynamics, if you could spot a giver from a taker, you'll be way better at navigating the world and building solid relationships that actually benefit both people.
Okay, that makes sense. But it still seems like takers have an advantage, right? They're all about getting ahead, even if it means stepping on people. So how do they end up on top if givers are so busy helping everyone else?
It's a good question. And it really comes down to this. Takers might win in the short term, but givers, they win the long game. Takers, They might climb the ladder fast, but they leave a lot of wreckage behind them. Givers, they build those strong relationships and that trust, and those things pay off over time.
So it's more about building something sustainable than just like a quick grab for power.
Exactly. And that brings us to something really interesting about giving. It's not just about being nice or whatever. There are real benefits for the giver, too.
Okay, now that I got to hear more about, tell me about these benefits. I think a lot of people would be surprised to hear that giving is actually good for you.
It really is. For one thing, Grant says, givers create this feeling of safety and trust in groups. Like, people feel comfortable taking risks and sharing ideas because they know they won't be shot down.
Yeah, that makes sense. When you feel safe, you're more willing to put yourself out there.
Exactly. And there's research on this. Grant talks about studies where just believing in students actually made them perform better.
Yeah.
The power of positive expectations, right?
It's like that saying, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. But it's more than just a feeling. It's about creating an environment where people feel like they can actually succeed.
Exactly. And get this, giving actually affects your brain. Like, literally releases those feel-good chemicals when you help others.
So it's not just feel-good fluff, it's science.
Exactly. And it gets even cooler. Studies show that if you focus your giving, like instead of doing random acts of kindness, you do it more consistently, it actually makes you happier.
Hold on. Focus your giving. What's it mean?
It's like working out. You get better results if you're consistent, right? Same with giving. Yeah. You got to make it a regular thing, not just something you do once in a while.
Okay, so instead of spreading ourselves thin, we should be more intentional with our giving.
That's the idea. Make it a sustainable part of your life.
That's a good point. I know I felt burned out when I try to do too much at once.
For sure. And that makes me think about the potential downsides of being a giver that we talked about earlier. Like, what about those times when givers get taken advantage of?
It's like givers are kind of wired to see the good in people, which, can be a good thing, but it also makes them easy targets for people who just want to take advantage.
Exactly. And Grant tells these crazy stories about givers getting tricked by scams and stuff.
So how do you protect yourself without, becoming super cynical and suspicious? Because that's not really a solution either.
Right. It's not about turning into a cynic. It's more about setting boundaries, like learning to say no sometimes. It's not selfish. It's actually how you keep giving in a healthy way.
So taking care of yourself is important. Like, you can't keep pouring from an empty cup.
Exactly. Self-care is crucial for givers. It's how you make sure you can keep showing up for others.
You got to draw the line between being selfless and being a pushover.
Exactly. And Grant actually talks about how women especially fall into this trap. They're often better at negotiating for other people than for themselves.
That's so interesting. I wonder why that is. But yeah, that's a whole other deep dive.
Definitely. But the point is, givers got to watch out for that and learn to stick up for themselves just like they do for everyone else.
So we've talked about the good and the bad of being a giver. But what I really love is this idea that giving is contagious.
Oh, yeah. It's powerful. Grant talks about how one person's generosity can inspire a whole chain reaction, like a ripple effect of positivity.
I love that. Like that quote, be the change you want to see in the world.
Exactly. It all goes back to what we were saying before. Success isn't a zero-sum game. When you embrace giving, you're not just helping yourself, you're creating a better environment for everyone.
It's about baking a bigger pie for everyone to share.
That's a great way to put it. At the end of the day, that's Grant's big message. We're all connected, and giving has this incredible power to transform things.
It's about making the world a better place, not just for ourselves, but for everyone. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you want our listeners to remember from Grant's book?
I think it's this. Real success isn't about what you have. It's about the impact you have on other people.
It's about leaving things better than you found them.
Exactly. And that's something we can all think about no matter where we fall on that giver-taker spectrum.
Absolutely. So to everyone listening, think about your own life. What's one small thing you can do today to bring a little more giving into the world? Maybe it's a compliment or helping someone out or just really being present with the people around you.
Because even the smallest act of kindness can make a difference. And who knows? It might just inspire someone else to do the same.